Welcome everybody for the Wednesday night impromptu call, brought to you by Dr. Karen. uh, uh, Paul, Dr. Karen, she is a well-known doctor in her field. It would take half an hour to go through her bio. I'll not do that right now. Paul Stowers is going to be our MC tonight. He was gracious enough. He's uh, been in the company for a year and a half. He's way smarter than I am, having to do with all these products, and that's why I asked him, and he was gracious enough to do that. And also, we have the pleasure of having Chip LittleJohn. He's part of the scientific advisory board for Avini. This is like Christmas for me having Chip on a call. I've never been on a call with Chip, and he's also with his wife, the master distributor for our company. These people, they have a heart of gold, and also Dr. Karen. I know these folks that are on here probably also have a heart of gold, and our purpose here is to save one person at a time. So, without any more talking, I want to give it over to Paul here. And Paul, you just go ahead, and then we probably might have some questions and so forth. It's not going to be like a complete presentation. It's going to be touch on the biggest spearhead product that we have. And go ahead, Paul, if you could, please.
Well, thanks, Steve, for that intro. And you said I'm smarter than you. Well, Chip is way smarter than all of us. So thanks for being here, Chip. Uh, but it's a pleasure to share with you tonight. What I want to do is we're going to just run through kind of high level, set up the table for the Avini products, and then I'm going to have Chip kind of share about the products, just kind of cover the highlights of what we have to offer, and then we can answer questions. Maybe what we'll do, Chip, is address questions as we go along. We'll try to keep it moving quickly, though, as to respect everybody's time tonight. Thank you for tuning in. This is recorded, so those that couldn't make it tonight, they can maybe watch the recording. So really the concept here is the healthy cell concept with Avini. It's really choosing health means learning how to supply your cells with everything that you need while keeping free of toxins. And that's really the focus of our company is really keeping things free of that bioaccumulate in our bodies that really cause disruption. And by the way, if you guys can mute your lines out there because I'm doing the presentation, or Steve, maybe you can help with that. That would be helpful as we go along to keep the noise down. But anyways, but when we look at the fact that we hear this all the time, that people eat the right foods, they exercise, they take the right supplements, they do all the right things, and yet they still find themselves in an unhealthy situation. And really the proposition here is that maybe it could be water that we're drinking, the air we breathe, the food we eat, and other things that are causing health disruptions in our lives. And that's really what our tip of the spear product deals with. But as we all are aware, there's the toxins in our environment have really shaped the sickness and disease in our society. It's as and we really can't escape it. My 2.5 years taking this product, Cell Defender, that we have, we'll talk about here tonight, and just researching as a layperson, I really am convinced that we can't out nutrition our way to good health if we don't get the bioaccumulation of the junk out of the body. The body's a miracle; it can heal itself if the junk's removed. And Chip can speak to that here shortly, but bottom line is that's really what we're talking about. I'm going to skip through some of these slides a little bit, just because I think all of us here probably understand the fact that we are toxic, and it's coming from our food, the air, water, chemicals, gasoline, oil, skincare products, and on it goes. And then there's this thing that I read about in 2005. There was this cord blood study. It's a landmark cord blood study where they studied the umbilical cords of newborn or babies being in the that haven't been born yet, and the moms are passing on over 260 heavy metals and toxins to these children, or the body's trying to get rid of this through the umbilical cord. Amazing study that even nobody's safe basically at the end of the day. So no matter where you live in this world, it's just all around us. And of course, these heavy metals that we're talking about and the other toxins in the environment, they're enzyme disruptors, lead, mercury, aluminum, arsenic, brain, nervous tissues, Alzheimer's, ADD, autism, peripheral neuropathy, cadmium, nickel, lung damage, emphysema, sinuses, cancer, etc. So heavy metals are just wreaking havoc in our bodies. And I've seen way too much to know that when you get these out of the body does amazing things. PFAS is forever chemicals. They're everywhere in everything. Over 70,000 known chemicals, volatile organic compounds that are released and have been released into our world in the last 30, 40 years. And so all these things are compounding. And then you add on to the fact of environmental, places around the country have unique environment situations, really create even more problems. So that's really kind of the setup for our flagship product. And really, what Avini is about, decreasing the body burden. When somebody asks me, what do I do for a living? I tell them I'm in the toxic removal business and we specialize in the human body. And that's really what we're all about. And so, with that, Chip, I want to turn it over to you. Chip is our in-house science. I don't know, Chip, your background as far as I know you've as far as medical wise. So I can't speak to that other than you're on the science advisory team. And you really understand the products that Avini is presenting to the marketplace to create this healthier, cleaner body. But can you just kind of share a little bit about your background, Chip, and then talk about the product here, our flagship product, and we'll get into the other products as we go along about how they help to get these toxins out. So, Chip, take it away.
Okay, well, thank you, Paul. Hi, everybody. I think I'm listening to the crowd that we've got here, and it's everybody's a doctor of some kind, and I'm thinking about what I can bring to the table, and I think it's going to have to be what's different. What's new here, what's powerful, and how do I know these things? I'm immersed in this topic every day. Have been, approaching 19 years since I first saw what this particular biochemist was doing. And I looked at it and I thought, okay, that's different. Everything I knew before had been the building blocks of good health. But why didn't you get the result that you were hoping for? And what I saw with him was he was looking at the stumbling blocks that kept it all from fitting together right. I thought, okay, that's pretty powerful because you do that one thing and everything starts to go right at once. And I just thought this may be the most important thing I've ever come across. And now, all these years later, I feel the same way. When I saw it, I heard he was going to be speaking in Colorado. So I went over there, walked up to him, went and listened to him speak, and have been friends ever since. And so that's kind of how that all began. So what have we got? How do I learn what I know? I'm the most accurate way I could tell you is that the people using these products are my professors. And so every day I'm in touch with many people that are benefiting, discovering. I don't know what stage you are, each individual person that's with us tonight, but it's my expectation that something incredible is going to go right with each one of you that gets pretty close to the top of your score sheet. And so as I'm talking to those people, this is how I get them to teach me. I'll say, okay, where are we at? What are we working on tonight? And they'll tell me what their situation is. And I'll say, okay, what's the most useful thing, the best thing you've found to deal with that so far? Well, that's quite an education. Then the next thing is, well, what's left? What couldn't you get? If you're going to get further improvement, what would that look like? What's left out that you still need help with? Then at that point, have a pretty good idea of the situation, and then kind of go into this basic idea. And so let's talk about the stumbling block thing and what a stumbling block looks like. It pretty much, every metabolic function, there's going to be a biologically active metal involved. and there will be a competing toxic metal, a heavy metal, one that's stronger in charge, heavier in the weight in the nucleus, and it will always win that space. And it'll displace the metal that needs to be there, and that particular metabolic function won't work right or at its full capacity, ever again. And so let's just pick one for an example. Probably everybody kind of has the idea that when people get a cold or the flu, one of the things they'll do is take zinc. Well, why? Well, they're thinking zinc will help the immune system. Well, why will the zinc help the immune system? Well, it helps to get more immune cells. So how's that work? Well, zinc finger proteins help to read the DNA strands in replicating all cells. And in that particular case, we're focusing on immune cells. Okay, that's cool. But the problem there is that arsenic is the metal that competes with zinc for the center of that zinc finger protein. And if it gets in there, it'll displace the zinc and it'll change the shape. And an arsenic finger protein is dyslexic. It can't read a DNA strand properly. And no matter, this is a huge deal here, and this is really the foundation of what we do with our lead product. No matter how much zinc you take, you can never drive that arsenic out of that spot. And what's here is we actually are able to exploit its traits, its ability to drive itself in somewhere. And we use this product, which we call detoxylite. It's the active ingredient in several of our products, or one of the actives in several of our products. And what that does is it just becomes a home for those toxic metals. So anything that's high in charge, small in van der Waal radii, is going to go in there and get stuck. The biologically active metals, it loses interest in. There is a hierarchy of affinity. The ones that hurt us go in for the same. This simplifies the heck out of it for me. The reason they get stuck in the cage is the same reason they hurt us. They go in there and occupy a space and they won't let it go. Cool thing is, once they're inside of the mineral cage that we prepare in this way, they're stuck there. And they're safely, easily, gently ushered to the exit. And the urinary excretion of heavy metals goes up drastically. So the concept is that when you take our lead product, the very next time you pee, you're peeing poison. So people ask, how soon does it start? Well, right away. I mean, within minutes, things start to happen. And then, well, when do you quit? Well, essentially, all you found here is a way to take a shower on the inside and wash away things you couldn't get at before. Nothing more than hygiene. And so I always tell people, this is like you found a toothbrush and didn't have one before, and you should quit using it on the same day that you quit brushing your teeth for the same reason. And those kind of thoughts really boil it down to me and make it understandable for everybody. And so if indeed the premise was true, and pulling these poisons out allows every metabolic function to work as it should, and as the tissues are replacing themselves, the new tissues are better, cleaner, then you have attributes of a younger organism. You know, if I was going to guess why you guys are here tonight and girls are here tonight, it would be to have attributes of a younger you. Maybe, and I just wrote this down as I was hearing everyone being introduced as different kinds of physicians. What are the things we're good at, in helping people? What's left? What's so difficult for us? What would we like to be better? So it's essentially that one-on-one question, only it's going through maybe all the people that you help in your practice. What's the best tool you have so far? If you were asking for another tool to be able to help you in some way to improve the outcomes, what would that look like? And I'm going to say, maybe I shouldn't, but I'm going to say this, and it's a bit challenging, and I guess probably you wouldn't be here if you weren't thinking kind of like I hope you are. Oftentimes when people begin to use these products and they go back in to be evaluated, they test beautifully, and frequently the caregiver that's testing them will say, that looks fantastic, whatever you're doing, keep doing it. And to me, the reason you're on this call is that you're going to take it one step further, and that is, I'd like to have that result for all my patients. How does this work? And that's pretty much the thoughts that I bring to the call this morning or this evening, Paul.
If you can speak to each product here, then that's a great overview. Just talk briefly about Cell Defender, what it is, what Rick created. Kind of give like a 2-minute review of each of these products. We'll go through all of the products in step, and then we can ask for people that may have questions.
Okay, Paul, just to make sure, do you want me to do this in 5 minutes or 10, or what do you got in mind?
Just let's do a high level 2 minute, 3 minutes on each product. Just kind of give them the highlights of each thing and kind of what makes this special, and then what is it, and then we'll go to the next product.
Okay, so if I do a minute on each one, I have time for a little bit of background. Where does this come from? And I think you'll get the idea. So the originator, this biochemist whose picture's on the screen, Rick Deitch, was trained at the Duke Cancer Research Institute, where he was a computer-assisted drug designer. That meant that he could do, in simulation, what might take, years to do in a lab in a few weeks. And his job was specifically to work with 2 Nobel Prize winners. And it was Monroe Wall, who created Taxol, and Gertrude Elion was working on problems with camptothecin. And so camptothecin, Rick always said, if you give me a lab animal with a growth, it's nearly perfect. But when we tried to put it into human trials, there was a protein in humans, circulating human albumin, that would attach to the camptothecin and camptothecin analogs and knock out the kidneys. And so my job was to figure out how not to hurt you as much, how not to risk as much in trying to solve these problems. So you can imagine going through and doing this, and he'd try to twist it, add something, take something away, and see how it worked. But the question that arose in his mind, what if we actually helped people to help them instead of risking or hurting them to some degree to help them? That became the big question. He got married, had kids, needed money, got picked up by Rexall out of his PhD program, and they were starting down natural product lines, and they had decided to do network marketing to represent it instead of their store shelves. Then it freed him up to have this concept. What if we help people to help them? And he was brought on to be an assistant to their formulators. Within a year, he was their lead formulator. They became the largest manufacturer of healthy products, on the planet for a while. And then they had problems bureaucracy-wise and, kind of receded a bit. Well, that's kind of been the story of his life. He'd come someplace and then a bureaucracy that was hanging over the biochemist became the flaw. And we believe what we have here is what many of us have wanted for a long time, and that is to free him up, to bring the things along that he's had maybe in his vault for a while, prepared to go, or needed a little bit more work to be tweaked. And that's what Avini is. We've been running for about 1.5 years. So we have 3 products that are kind of unique in all the world because they're single active ingredient products that have drastic effects. So think about that. 3 ingredients or 3 products, each of which has 1 active ingredient, and it's leading a company like this. So number 1, Cell Defender. When he was there at Rexall, he was approached by some guys from Croatia, and they had a product that was basically a zeolite-based product. Zeolite's a naturally occurring mineral that is negatively charged inside and has openings, and it's typically full of poison. And they had a product like that, and they wanted him to bring it to his marketplace because he had, a $1 billion marketplace. But he looked at it and he said, I see 2 main problems. I think we could fix this and turn it into a great product. The size is unpredictable, and it's still carrying all the dirt and the poison's in it. If we corrected those 2 problems, well, they were disappointed, shook their head and walked away. They didn't get him to take their product. But it resonated in his mind, and he just kept thinking about it. How can I make it small? How can I get it clean? And essentially, it's kind of like making water run uphill to get, these kind of things to leave a cage like that. But he figured it out. It's basically a cationic exchange, and he was able to get the cationic exchange to run backwards, to release the bonds a little bit, to oxidize the heavy things, to precipitate some out, float others off, and do it over and over and over again. Process that takes 3 days to a week and over 30 steps to accomplish in order to get it like it is, and not allow it to move forward unless the size is under a micron. Now our average is around a half a micron in size. The reason that's super important is now, by the way, these guys from Croatia had brought studies in dogs where they took the dirty zeolite and they put it intravenously into dogs with tumors, and the dogs had remarkable effects. So I can report on existing research. That's existing research. That's what I saw. That's what he saw. That exists. Okay. And so someone's saying they can't see me. My camera's on. You should be able to see me. I hope it's okay. Anyway.
Yeah, you're good on our end here.
Okay, all right. And so he essentially went to work on that, and that has turned into that lead product. And once again, that's what I introduced the call with. The second thing is something that he was frustrated with, and particularly trying to help veterans who came back all torn up and injured and wound up with stronger and stronger medications for misery and agony. And he thought, is there some way that we could go into that problem, people that hurt, and not have addiction, not have overdose, not have numbing, not have bowels put to sleep, not have it work worse and then have to go to another one over time? Is there some way that we could do that? And essentially, he had looked into venomous animals during his research at Duke, and he'd been working with cone snails, and they're really hard to milk. So he started working with cobras. And we now have access to 300 cobras in a reptile farm. They're milked every other week and given a rat right after they're milked, so they're happy as can be. And their neurotoxin is denatured, then diluted 1/10,000. In that form, it becomes a homeopathic drug by concentration. So what do I mean by concentration? The active ingredient, which is a peptide, a short chain protein in that product, is so effective that by weight, it's 600 times more effective than the active ingredient in morphine. And the limitations of morphine, where it can actually kill you, hurt you, get addicted, all those kind of things, put your bowels to sleep, don't exist here. Wow. That sounds important. And we have it both as a topical and as a systemic oral spray. So that's the second single active ingredient product. The way it works is a message coming down a nerve is electrical. A message that's operating your thoughts or your perception or your muscles looks like the truth coming down that message, coming down that nerve. Misery looks like a lie in a lie detector test coming down that nerve. Very high amplitude and scrambled. The way the product works is it goes to the receptor on the receiving side of the synapse. So it's the alpha-7 nicotinamide acetylcholine receptor site, and it limits what can go through there as far as amplitude. And so the useful messages go through normal, and the bad one, the misery that would look like a lie on a lie detector test, is reduced to the amplitude of the truth. You still know you hurt, but it's not near as bad. And that's essentially the mechanism. That instant that it's going through the chemical switch, we have a chance to modulate it. And that's the way that product works. Interestingly enough, craziest, thing that could ever imagine, I suppose, that exact same receptor is on the surface of macrophage. So the alpha-7 nicotinamide acetylcholine receptor site is also on the surface of a macrophage. There, it helps a macrophage to determine how high amplitude of a response it's going to put out to an inflammatory challenge. So you once again are able to modulate the inflammation along with modulating the message. What happens is you wind up with a sensible response from the immune system, and you can actually wind up, while you're suppressing some of the perception of misery, you can enhance the useful messages coming down a nerve. So that's the second single ingredient, super important product. I hope you can see the value of that in a world where so much, discomfort and misery and so many pain meds are being prescribed. The third single ingredient, super important product. Going to kind of tie it back to the cell defender. Cell defender essentially takes things out of you that are inanimate and harming you, heavy metals, that kind of thing, volatile organics, that sort of thing. That's what it does. Maybe some of you guys are Clint Eastwood's fans, and you remember the movie For a Few Dollars More. He and Lee Van Cleef are both bounty hunters. And they come into town, they rip down the wanted poster. Well, what's it say on the wanted poster? Wanted, dead, or alive. And so what Paul's put up here on the screen is Avini Nano. Well, I bet you almost everybody here has in their bag of tricks or in their medicine chest from one point or another in their life, you've got some silver. Why? Well, because it's antimicrobial, antibacterial, whatever you want to say, that's anything that's alive. Wanted alive things are in there. But why doesn't it get used like it should, or as much as you would think? The reason is there were limitations to it. Pretty effective on the outside of the body in any of those forms. But if it's left in the colloidal form, colloidal simply meaning small particle, clay means small particle, colloidal silver is small particle, but it's, once again, size, shape, and charge are everything throughout this product line. And so you have a material, silver, that is indeterminate in size and shape. And it'll go in, and instead of being highly mobile within our body and therefore highly efficacious, it'll get stuck someplace, and that's where you get argyria or the bluing of the skin. Even that isn't dangerous, but it's not very becoming, and it's permanent. So on the other end of the spectrum, if you have ionic silver, people with car batteries trying to make silver in their garage and very proud of themselves, ionic silver is also great on the outside of your body. It's going to kill all those things. But when you take it internally, it's too deadly. Too deadly. So it's going to not just harm the pathogenic things, it's also going to harm your own cells, your own immune system, and your own microbiome. In the form that we've discovered, which is 200 atoms in a ball, 7 to 10 nanometers across, held in that exact size and shape by a single coating of silver oxide tetrahedrons, it becomes selective. Once again, throughout the product line, that word selective is crucial. What's missing on the other side? Selectivity. I'm sorry, we're going to have to risk something to help you. We're going to have to hurt you to help you. Here, we can't do that. If you put stuff in Paul's and my hands and we could hurt people, we might hurt people. The cool thing is these products, by definition, are in a network marketing company. They're on the natural side. They can't hurt you. So Avini Nano Silver is able to, for example, the type of a pathogen that causes a pandemic has little spikes sticking out all over it. What do those do? They help as a tool or a key for that pathogen to break into our cell to cut up our DNA so that it can make copies of itself. It is not an advanced life form. It's very simple, can't reproduce internally, has to cut up our DNA to make copies of itself. The nano will not let it go in. Interestingly enough, the cell defender has an effect there too as well. If they are cut up, they find each other after the cell has been destroyed in the interstitial fluids, partially by charge. And the ones that are positively charged will attach to the outside of the zeolite cage, the cell defender cage, kind of like iron filings attaching to the outside of a magnet. So now you have absorption inside, adsorption outside, and they're hauled out of the area, and it's missing some of the things it needs to make a copy of itself. So that's kind of how that one goes. So that was 1, 2, 3 single ingredient, highly important products for all human life, pretty much all life across the board. And from there, we have what I call the cousins, and those are additional products that have some of the detoxolite or the cell defender active ingredient in them. That would include our medicinal mushroom blend. We call it Z-Munity. Well, it's okay. You can go. I'll do it in order you see it. Z-Munity is the medicinal mushroom blend. And if you're familiar with mushrooms, the thing that's unique here, we grow 7 mushrooms in competition with each other, not separately and then mix them together later. We let them fight it out for their whole lifetime so that they create the protective polysaccharides that we want. And then that becomes, then we add the zeolite to it, and that's the immunity. Give me another one, Paul, and I'll tell the next one. What do you got? Okay, plus fiber. Okay, plus fiber is super important because let's just say you'd like to show off on your next blood test instead of going in worried about it. I mean, you guys, I mean, you're medical people. If you start getting sick, it's embarrassing. I know how that goes. You know, you're the one that's supposed to solve the problems, not suffer from it. Let's say you want to go in and show off on your next blood test, have great sugar, great blood lipids. This is garantido. Great A1C in a bottle. That's essentially accomplished, and it's mixed into a fiber product with the zeolite in it. Both soluble and insoluble fibers, not water soluble and insoluble, but acid soluble and insoluble. Okay, so that's what's there. Flip me up another one. Okay, plus energy. Looks like a 5-hour energy shot, only it is a healthy way of doing that. So I'm a 1950 model human, 73 years old. Next year will be my 65th year in a row water skiing. I still coach water skiers at a high level. You know, Paul's a great athlete. He plays pickleball pretty much every day, I think, and tennis. And what we find is when people use this product, whether it's like I did it before I, set out to do this call tonight. Why? Because I need to have multiple mental files open and be able to access them as needed. Well, the same thing for my skiers on the water. What we feel is that time slows down. You can see things moving in slower motion. You have greater physical and mental acuity and agility within minutes. And it lasts for a couple hours. And that's the idea behind the plus energy shot. Next one, Paul. Okay, plus relief, we did that. Right. Trim science, kind of along the same line with a little bit of an eye towards optimal body structure. You've probably done the white fat, brown fat thing where brown fat burns and white fat actually winds up sequestering toxins within us, and which things are allowed to be absorbed, which aren't. More neurotropins and adaptogens, zeolite mixed into it, convenience of several flavors. I use that along with oftentimes I'll use the chocolate flavored one in my coffee in the morning, just to get a little lift to get the day started. And that's how that's the concept there. Okay, and the most recent addition to the line is plus hydration. The old water wetter concept. Why do we have water in us? Carry in nutrients, carry away waste, cushion us, keep us, have turgor pressure so that we don't wilt. And all of those things require that the water be mobile. Once again, size, shape, and charge. And the world that we play in here, the world that we're competing in there, is essentially sports drinks. And remember the old Gatorade thing where the Florida Gators had Gatorade, nobody else did. And they did great that year, and it kind of started that whole thing. Well, the key is that when you swallow the water, if you're in an intense situation, it can't just sit in the gut. It can't just go down and sit in the colon and not get absorbed, get moved out into the tissues. So the secret weapon here is, and when you read the label on it, you're going to see 22 grams of sugar in a serving. Well, it has sugars that normally most of us, I bet you and me both, have spoken against. So maltodextrin and fructose. Biochemist says, nope, not the way I'm using it. I'm using these things to create a longer chain carbohydrate. I use that then to hold the electrolytes farther apart, to change the osmolality which means the movement of the water into the system. And this comes down to an osmolality around 220, and typical, 250, 260, 280 are other products and the body. And it has to have a lower osmolality in order to move. What we find is that people who are in an athletic performance or in their day, if their day is difficult, are able to continue at their highest level. A 1% decrease in hydration leads to a 12% drop off in performance. We're able to keep at that high level. And as a bonus, this is pretty cool, and it turns out it's true. People whose legs won't lay still at night or whose legs cramp at night, 90% of those people will benefit from this product to have their legs settle or stop cramping. If you're one of those people or know some of those people, that's a miracle in their world, because you can bet they've tried everything to get here. So that's what I got.
So Chip, so let's go back to Cell Defender here. Well, I'll leave it on this slide here, and we know some of the other products there. The only one that's missing from this slide, I think, is the hydration. So let's leave it on this, but let's open it up for questions. You set up really at the end of the day, we have Cell Defender that takes out the inorganic toxins, heavy metals, VOCs, volatile organic compounds. We have the nano silver that kind of deals with the living organisms in the body that shouldn't be there. So we're kind of hitting both spectrums by removing the blockages with that in the body. The mushrooms, of course, is immune modulator, helps the immune system modulate. You got the fiber, of course, we talked about that, and the hydration, and of course the plus relief. But let's open it up for questions to Chip specifically. And we can share some testimonies too, Chip, but let's just see if anybody has any questions here about the products. And since we have you tonight, you'd be the best person to direct those questions to. So does anybody have any questions? If you do, just go ahead and unmute yourself, and let's take a minute and answer some questions.
This is Dr. Karen. I know a lot of my patients, including myself, can't handle stevia in products just because of the flavor, the bitter aftertaste, and so forth. Is there any stevia in any of these products?
He likes monk fruit. It doesn't like stevia. And, there are some things that, you kind of raise an eyebrow at if you've been careful about everything. So think about this. And it's one of the reasons I highlight the single active ingredient products. Really, no question about any of those. When you go into the multiples, now you start getting sweeteners, and you start getting things for texture and mouthfeel and color and all that kind of thing, taste and flavors. But he is really picky and cautious about that, and is good at defending them. Stevia isn't one of the things that he prefers to use as a sweetener. Monk fruit is really expensive. That's one of the things that he uses as a sweetener. Obviously, when you get to the plus hydration, there actually is fructose and maltodextrin in it. So those things are there for a reason, and they are the thing that gives. And it's not real sweet, and it's not a ton of sugar, and it's there for a reason. So if you don't like if you have somebody who just every little thing throws them into a tailspin, start with the Cell Defender. Oftentimes that'll move them back from the cliff, and things that used to bother them won't. But it's still the very best way to use these products is not as an antidote to bad behaviors, but along with other good choices.
Excellent. Thank you so much. It seems like at first blush, most people will go, I've got a really good immune product. Well, I take my fiber, and I've got some weight loss coffee and whatnot. And you think, ho hum. But when you explain the science and what Rick and others have done in his formulations, why this is new and different and exciting, it makes it all kind of come alive. Thank you so much for taking the time.
It really genuinely is exciting, and I hope you can, sense. I still feel, this is some of the most important things I've learned in my effort to try to get better. And one thing that's going to be similar between, all of us that are here, we're going to demand that something great happen for us and the people around us. And so by that measure, these things better add up. The value of the benefits of the products better be worth a lot more than you pay for them.
Exactly. And I
Hey,
know
Dr. Kelly.
a lot of the participants on this call are excited to hear some testimonials too. So we'll spend a little time, I hope, doing that. Thank you so much, Chip.
I'm going to ask a question.
Yes, go ahead.
I'm going to turn it down because I want to ask a question.
We're ready. Go ahead with your question.
Okay.
I hear you.
Okay.
If you just said, okay, I'm listening.
I think she was turning something in the background down. So
I was just trying to be polite, but I can hear
yes,
okay.
you got. Laura, you need to unmute yourself, honey, if you want to ask a question.
There's
While we're
Lester
waiting-
Lewis who wants to ask a question. Their hand is up.
Yes,
Hey,
go
greetings,
ahead.
greetings,
Greetings.
How you doing, sir? I was calling. The question was, I have a colleague in the hospital right now. I have some bad hernia issues. Which products would you suggest for me to grab for him to provide some type of relief? And I guess
All
the
right,
other
this is
second
going to
part.
seem like
Go
a
ahead.
strange answer, but if you have hernias, you're basically ripping your tissue.
Correct.
All right. So I'm going to answer about every tissue in every human. So part of my history is I come from special forces. I had my own special forces team when I was a young man. I've done a lot of super high altitude parachuting and that kind of stuff. When I came home, my original education was in agricultural research. I used to raise all the chickens and turkeys at the University of Nebraska in Lincoln that were under research. So I was around a lot of PhDs. Later on, I wound up involved in, I was a farm systems manager for the University of Nebraska in the panhandle of Nebraska. So once again, I was between the PhDs and the people doing the work. But in between that time, when I came home from the military, I ran a 250,000 head livestock operation all by myself, Lewis. And people ask, well, how did you do that? And I would explain to them, well, rainbows, brooks, and browns. And they said, well, you were on drugs? I said, no, those are different kinds of trout. And this is the message I want you to get. The trout that I raised crowded together, coming in the beautiful water, coming right out of the side of a hill at the very top of a spring, scoured their ponds down to bare sand. And they only could eat what I threw to them out of a bag of processed food. If you ate those trout, their flesh was white and mushy and not very tasty. An inch away, after it went through all that and left those ponds and got into the wild part of the stream, I could reach down in and pick up just a fistful of living mass, green moss and, aquatic plants. And it was teeming with freshwater shrimp and snails and insects. And I learned to eat the trout for myself from there. Why? Because their flesh was pink and firm and tasty. And I remember thinking at that time, oh my God, the same thing's happening to us. We've either got white, soft, mushy, or pink, firm, tasty, strong muscles. And if you're ripping your tissues and you're breaking your bones, a lot of the explanation comes with the toxic materials that are picking up and that stumbling block concept where the right thing can't get where it needs to make a good, clean, healthy tissue. You will find as you get around the people doing this, and please come to Las Vegas at the end of April where we all get together with the biochemist, and just look around at the people that are there with you. Many of us are on the trip from 70 to 90. And we've watched the generation in front of us do the same thing and haven't done it very comfortably. It's been horrible to watch. We've been their caregivers. We don't want to do it the same way. And so when you begin using this, then as you are replacing your tissues, it's with better and cleaner. The accuracy of the reproduction of every cell, the checking of the DNA after it's been made to make sure it can make another cell is done better. The immune system is better. The bones are cleaner because the lead starts to be pulled out of it. If you fall, we call that an impromptu bone density test. You lay there on the ground, slip on black ice, and you take an inventory. If you get back up and go on, you passed. If you lay there and need help, you failed. And something caused that tissue in that gut to not be able to withstand the activities of a human. I mean, maybe if it was something god awful, but people are ripping their tissues just in normal activities. And they're just made of that white, soft, tasteless stuff that those tame fish were made of. And this is part of what I expect for all of you to get from this, is you will have attributes of a younger, more vibrant, healthier you, cleaner, deep cleaned inside. I hope that makes sense. I don't know if that's what you're expecting, but that's what you pulled out of my brain.
Yeah, the specific product he's referring to is Cell Defender for your friend. There's actually a clinical study that shows muscle recovery is enhanced by getting the toxins and heavy metals out of the body with Cell Defender. So that's going to be the good one. And if he's dealing, I would think, Chip, if he's got obviously pain and inflammation issues, the Plus Relief would be a good product to kind of give some more instant relief. But long-term, Cell Defender would be the product that would provide the greatest support for future health. Great.
Exactly.
Another question? You got a question out there? Another one?
Yes. Cora?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes. I've had 3 back surgeries and 2 hip replacements. And now the doctor is telling me that I need another back surgery because I have spinal stenosis. And I have a lot of pain in my lower back and my legs, pain in my groin. And they said all coming from spinal stenosis. And so I'm wondering how would this product be a benefit to me and help me? Because I'm trying to keep having another surgery.
Okay. All right. So, that's not a quick fix. And sometimes surgery is just the perfect thing. I mean, if you literally have spicules growing on your spine, they're poking into your nerves, that's going to hurt. And if somebody has the skill to go in and get those off without hurting you too bad, God bless them, for having that skill. But what you want is for those not to be formed in the first place. So think about this. We do not pick up and haul off the biologically active metals like calcium that spicule is probably made of. But what we do is keep it moving. Even the good materials in your body become a problem if they get stuck someplace, if they quit moving. We as human beings must be moving inside and out. We got to move from an area of higher temperature to lower temperature, an area where we can find something to drink, an area where we can find a mate, an area, all those kind of things on the outside. Inside, the similar things are happening. If things quit moving, and typically there's acids involved in a drop-off like that because it's pulling something out of a bone and trying to neutralize something in a spot, and it starts making a mountain range or a spicule like that. And so you want it to not happen. As far as the discomfort goes, we believe that it's quite likely that the Plus Relief would be able to, and the reason you probably have the surgery is because it hurts so bad. But I'm just saying, we don't throw out anything else that you knew before. I mean, all of you that are doctors come from some sort of a favorite products, favorite practices. And I want to encourage you that none of those things are suddenly of no value or less value. Everything you knew before you got here is suddenly of its full value because you're pulling the things out that kept it from working like it should have all along. And what you're asking about, I mean, that's years to build up that spot. But we do have, testimonies in the group of people. One young man was beat up when he was 14 years old, part of a basketball game, broke his hip, had 3 hip replacements over the course of his lifetime. When he broke the second one, they wouldn't put in another one. He got super big and strong. He was like 6'10", and he was able with one leg to leg press over 1,000 pounds. And he's one of the people that's here. Why? Because if you go without a hip for 17 and a half years before they give you the third one, your back's all screwed up. And I got to talk to him the day before he used the product, Plus Relief. And I said, this thing is designed to build up in effectiveness over a 5 to 10 day period. And so keep using whatever you're using short term until it kicks in. Use the two together. That's fine. And when he got it, he, about 45 minutes later, he stood up off of the couch and walked away normally. And he called me on the phone. He said, you're not going to believe what just happened. And so there are examples like that, but if it's not that quick for you, it's okay. But once again, the answer to the first question about the torn hernia has the same thing to do with your skeleton. Think this way. It takes 10 to 12 years to totally replace your skeleton. Maybe you can't go in and pull out the poisons until that tissue is turning over. And so the chance to pull it out of there requires hygiene at the time that bone is replacing that particular tiny part of itself. That gives you a chance. Lead is usually what weakens bones. And it gives you a chance to pull that lead out. So 10 or 12 years from now, you could have a brand new skeleton with all the old lead plus 10 or 12 more years of lead, or you could have a brand new clean skeleton. And that's what we're seeing with people, is that they have wonderful, wonderful skeletons. So I hope that helps you to think about it and to realize the importance. Anybody else?
So Cell Defender again, and then the Plus Relief for kind of the immediate help with the pain relief and inflammation would be the 2 primary products. Sig, I've got a question from Sig MD there, it looks like, if I'm reading that right.
It's CJG MD.
I can't. CJG. Okay, gotcha.
I appreciate that. Okay, so kind of 2-part question. Can you speak to how these products will affect someone who has systemic parasitosis and how it would affect someone who has cancer?
Okay, let's start with the second one first, because that's the call that I get all day, every day, partly because my wife will be 12 years after having a real severe go at that. Female ones, the ones that come back, her surgeon said, if you don't take the follow-up treatments, you've wasted my surgery, that kind of a thing. But she was so afraid of those that she wouldn't do it. And so she turned to the natural side and said, I'm just going to do it that way as best I can. And she was supposed to have a couple of months, and that was it. I remember, I was the caregiver, she was the sick person. Neither one of those is a easy role. And the concepts that we were looking at, what takes care of you so that doesn't happen every day of your life? And so every time a new DNA strand is read, there's checks. And so there's tumor suppressing genes. P21, P27, P53 are some of the tumor suppressing genes that make sure that the new copy is good and safe. If not, they don't let that cell, make another copy. The other thing that can help is the immune cells. So the T cells, NK cells, and macrophage look at it, identify it, remember it, kill it, and eat it. Well, if it hides by putting a protein around itself that makes it imitate the healthy cell, then essentially you come around to something like immunity and ask it to look again and check its work. And so we are we're tapping into the thing that protected you all the time up until now. And those are such powerful modalities. You know, now we have immunotherapy coming on the other side, that, you know, not just the healthy side, but when it's there, it's so complex. You got to know exactly which cell and then which thing to do to it. Here, it's so foundational. You're just going back to those main, most powerful immune systems and asking them to check their work. And that's the mechanism there. The other thing you're talking about is the parasitology stuff. So that's Cell Defender, yes. And that's really why Nano Silver got into the product line. You know, what could we find that was more upstream than what we already had to deal with the living things that might be hurting? Best thing I can tell you about that is there is a colon clinic up in Bozeman, Montana. Gal's been in there for 30 years. Her daughters work there with her now. She thought she had retired until she got a hold of this. And she herself, her daughters, and the people that were coming to her after years had to get the textbooks out again because they have a clear viewing tube where they can see what's coming out. And things were coming out they had never seen before, like the heads instead of the body segments. Then stuff started coming out in big white mucus membranes. And so they realized they were no longer confined to the colon. They were getting things by using it systemically and orally. They were getting things that were in trouble up maybe as high as the liver and in the duodenum were exiting as well. So they, and what happened to her was, and this is my little business presentation for the night, both of her phones lit up. The ones for the people that wanted this product and the ones for the people that wanted to come to her clinic because they heard what was happening. How was that for my business presentation?
Hey Chip, can you address, and we'll get to Ray here in a second. Can you, so with your wife and your testimony, we kind of coined the phrase the Marcy dose. And by the way, I do want to put this out there. You know, we try not to use the disease names, and we kind of, you know, and we don't diagnose, and our products don't cure or heal anybody. The body does that. We're just removing the body burden, letting the body, as Rick says, a cleaner, healthier body fixes itself. But could you address the bad cell scenario as far as what Marcy did? Because we have the Marcy dose of the Cell Defender, and I know she did the immunity mushrooms as kind of what was the two main products she did to help the body get its right-sided or protect itself. Could you address that?
Yeah, and it was a scary deal. You know, everybody said do the standard of care. Her dad and her brother came and begged her to do it. Her, you know, physician or surgeon, who was great, I think, begged her to do it. We did the Anschutz Cancer Center over in Colorado, our local hospital, and then we went to Cancer Treatment Centers of America in Tulsa because I knew the lead gastroenterologist there, and I thought, well, their philosophy is going to be more like ours, and it was, but they're still required to recommend the standard of care, which was Taxol, carboplatin, and radiation, and I'm talking a bunch of it. Way longer than she was supposed to live. And so she came up with the idea, well, if I'm only supposed to live 8 weeks, I don't have much time, and I kind of understand how the products work, I'm going to just keep topping it off every hour so it's at its maximum benefit all the time, because I know when I take it, the very next time I pee, I'm leaving some of it behind. And so she said, I'll just top it off every hour. Well, it worked. And she kept telling her story. And now for thousands of people, the same thing has happened. And even the biochemist calls it the Marcy dose to top it off every hour. And then you add the immunity to do that. You know, you think about no matter how you're killing it. Here's an interesting little tidbit. Apoptosis, of course, is the natural programmed cell death when the genes or the immune system, you know, kill it, but it cleans up its own mess. Well, the other way of killing is necrosis, and it's like just killing dead chunks of tumor meat in there, and that winds up being a mess and a toxic mess, and you got to deal with that. One of the cool things about this is it cleans up its own mess as it goes. I think that's a fascinating distinction. So I don't know.
So the Marcy dose, she did the Cell Defender. She did 10 drops every waking hour, but she'd go through about 5 to 6 bottles a month, and she did that, of course, for a couple months. I think she did it beyond that. Typically, if you listed all the testimonials for folks in that situation, and not, anywhere between 60, 90, 120 days, all of a sudden is when it seems like the body has this major breakthrough type testimonials. And then the immunity mushrooms, I believe she did it 2 capsules 4 times a day. So that's the Marcy dose for that scenario, and hope it answers that question. And I think, did any follow up on that?
Yeah, what's the normal dose? If the Marcy dose was 10 drops every hour, what's the normal?
Yeah,
Well, you can look on the containers, and it's twice a day.
Yeah, so all the clinical studies, all the clinicals were done 10 drops twice a day. So what Rick, our biochemist, would say is if no one's done, let's say you don't have any known concerns, but you know that you're building up these bioaccumulating toxins, he would say do four times a day for the first month, 10 drops 4 times a day, and then just go to twice a day, 10 drops for that's kind of just, which is about a bottle a month for the average person. And then of course you got the extreme, the Marcy dose, and the other spectrum. Myself, I had some health issues myself 2.5 years ago. And I basically didn't realize, I didn't connect it to toxicity at that time. But I went on the Marcy dose. I did 10 drops every waking hour, and basically within 60 days, 90 days, actually it was 90 days, all my health issues cleared up. So anyways, it was pretty amazing, and I really wasn't expecting anything. I didn't know what to expect. So all right, wonderful. What's that?
What was the parasite dose for the heads and all the other things? What was the parasite dose?
The more like Marcy, to get it, because you really want to stress them. You're going to change. You're going to just become a poor host. A lot of those things are there to consume you and do the ashes to ashes, dust to dust thing when you die.
Right.
And they're just seeing you to be so toxic and so acidic that they just make a simple mistake. They think you're dead already, so they start decomposing you while you're still alive. I mean, that's a pretty gross way to look at it. But all of a sudden, you just take on the attributes of them. What's our fascination that's shared between all of us here tonight? We're fascinated with living things and what makes us more alive. That's essentially what we're bringing.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
You bet.
Awesome. All right.
Chip, I thought, Chip, I thought in one of the calls that I had listened to, so I just want to clarify it. I might have misunderstood. I thought at one point it was 5 drops every waking hour, but you're saying the Marcy dose is 10 drops every waking hour.
So what's happened is now we just say 5 or 10. We believe that the product has improved so much that 5 is highly effective. It is so clean and so small and so uniform that we believe that you can, some people, well, there's a financial component to everything. I don't care who you are. And if you need to watch the frequency and the consistency over time are more important than how much you take at once. So I hope that helps.
Thank you.
And Rick will tell you too, the maximum that your body can process is 15 drops an hour. So, it's really protocol wise for somebody, if you're really got something serious, I'm going to do 5 drops, 10 drops, 15 drops. If the max is 15 that my body will process, I probably will do the 15 drops because, but 10 to 15, 5, anywhere in there. But it's consistency and frequency is what creates really the results. Ray, go ahead with your question, and then we're going to kind of pause questions for a minute, and then because we're at an hour here, and I want to just address in the backside for those that want to stay. We'll talk a little bit about some of the financial side of things for those that want that.
One thing haunting me, and that is somebody is here with a kidney issue tonight. Is that true? I don't want to leave that.
We would like you to address a mold toxicity.
Dr. Vincent, yes.
Dr. Vincent, he's online now, and mold toxicity, black mold, and kidney issues on dialysis. So we would like you to address that. I know we're not talking about diseases, but we're just family and this ain't going nowhere. Thank you so much.
Okay, that's the guy I was looking for, because I thought there was going to be that topic on the call tonight. So it's really, really important. I don't really want to let him go without having him understand what's here. Okay, so in agriculture, if you've ever been the person who is operating the loader and going into a place where the feed was stored, you get down to the bottom, there's a wet spot down in the corner, and you wind up doing the best you can to work around it, scoop it out of there, throw it to the side. But ag animals have trouble with aflatoxins and mycotoxins. And they began to work with zeolite in its raw form as a powder, which absorbs water, as a flowing agent to help feed go through equipment, for example. And they worried that it might drop off some of the poisons or it might steal some of the nutrients. Turned out it was the opposite. And it was actually a nutritional enabler. And what they saw was that reproductive and tissue building, food building, performance went up. And one of the things they believed was that the aflatoxins and mycotoxins and the molds being controlled was part of the reasons for that. And so that comes right back around to the cell defender. The nano silver is going to have an effect against those particular issues as well. Now, the kidney thing, especially if you're on dialysis already, and this is an everyday, all day thing for me, and I'm going to ask you guys to think about this a little bit. Everybody here has been around somebody who's on a dialysis machine. They sit down, get hooked up to it. Their blood goes over to the machine and comes back in a few minutes clean. Why do they sit there another 3.5 or 4 hours? And the answer is really the key to the way this product works. It's because the blood's clean, but the tissues still have poison in them. Now you've created a concentration gradient, so more can leave the tissue, go into the blood, and it goes over and gets cleaned again. Comes back, picks up more of the waste again, goes back, gets cleaned again. Exact same thing that happens when it takes a lap around your body and goes through the kidneys. Gets cleaned, goes out, picks up more waste, comes back and gets cleaned, goes up to the lungs and exchanges, carbon dioxide for oxygen, gets cleaned and prepared for another lap. Using the cell defender is the exact same kind of a thing. You take it, it cleans the body fluids. That sounds fast, and it is, but the tissues, it never enters a healthy cell. It will only enter a cell that's stealing your food after it is full of poison. Those cells have a voracious appetite. They have a different cell surface chemistry, a different cell surface charge, and they will literally take this in, and they've swallowed a poisonous depth charge. That triggers the process that we want. It kills them once they've ingested it within 72 hours. But that sounds fast. But all we've done is set up a foot race between the ones that are consuming it and making the right decision and the ones that haven't come across the product yet and are still dividing. So, and this, if I really encourage, if you're the person with the mold and the kidney problem, say the doctor's name again, that doctor that has the problem.
Dr. Michael Vincent.
Dr. Vincent, okay.
He's from Flint, Michigan, and he had to deal with all that as well years ago.
Okay, so Flint, Michigan, you're going to pick up some poisons up there. And so you're going to want to listen to Slade Lovejoy's testimony on kidneys. This has just happened within the last couple of months. He's a medical practitioner too. I think he's like a physical therapist in a big hospital. They were measuring it all the time. He'd already had a port put in, was headed for dialysis. His filtering was down below 22, I guess, put you into transplant territory. He was getting on a transplant list, started using this product, and all of a sudden everything just started reversing. And he tells his story beautifully, and he was being tested every week. Well, how could it make such a big difference so fast? He was just starting to lose those kidneys. They still were taking off water, and they weren't good enough at pulling off the metabolic waste. Why? Partly because they were also challenged with the industrial waste, and they're not really designed to do that until Cell Definer comes along and makes it easy to deal with the things it could not even get at before. So now think about this. It probably didn't improve the performance of the kidney that much, but what it did was take away the unnecessary part of the work. Now, over time, here we are a couple of months later, his kidneys are being replaced with better, newer, fresher, younger kidney cells. And so the tissues are now starting to be healthier and younger. But to happen in a very few days like that, it literally took some of the unnecessary load off of his kidneys. And so that I really wanted to say that tonight. And I think I could even politely excuse myself and ask Paul to take over, because Paul is about a 10 jillion times better business mind than me. I pretty much see in pictures the things I've told you tonight. I'm happy to do that. If you're with a patient, you're in trouble, you don't know what to do, you think this might help, you're welcome to call me. You don't have to notify me you're going to call me. Just call me right then. I'm happy to talk to you and them together. Anything else from me, Paul?
One last question from Ray here before we let you go, and I appreciate your time. Ray had his hand up. Ray, what was your question?
Well, I talked to someone today who has a friend with a serious autoimmune disorder that taking a pill once a month that costs $3,000 each month. And she wanted to know if there was someone she could talk to, who's either helped someone with that condition or someone who's gone through that condition.
Yeah, one of the things that's really wonderful is we have organized the people telling their stories. There's a website. It's just very simple, avinihealthtraining.com. And at the very top, there's a place, the index of testimonies, and you pop it up and it'll have probably one of the categories will be immune things. So real quickly on immune stuff. One of the foundations of that is the gut. And so if the gut starts having trouble and the close junctions on the single cell lining that covers the villi and microvilli starts leaking, food that's trying to be digested doesn't go all the way down to nutrients. It starts escaping the gut and circulating in the blood as food particles. And it causes an immune response. Now the immune system is overwhelmed. It's trying to fight with your food because it doesn't recognize it as nutrients. It can't use it in that form. And that, we believe, is one of the beginnings, one of the foundational problems that leads to immune dysfunction. When you start going through the immune people, it'll start with one and then it kind of bleeds over into another, and one starts looking a lot like the other, depending on which tissues and where the rashes are showing up, that kind of thing. But remember, our concepts are foundational. We think that if you're not toxic, if your gut lining is working right, if your blood numbers are right, then you're going to back away from that edge where you're almost to have an immune disaster. So your window of opportunity to survive or to deal with every problem that comes your way gets wider instead of narrower. And whatever things aren't directly dealt with by these products, your remaining capacity can turn towards that. So I always say the answer is always yes. Will it remove this, remove that? Well, yes, either directly or indirectly. Will it help this or help that? Well, yes, either directly or indirectly. And you may be the very first person exactly like you to do it. Been through that a lot of times, having started at the very beginning. I remember when we first had kids that were delayed developmentally, just started coming out of the woodwork and just all of a sudden started being normal. And I thought, okay, I didn't know that was going to happen, but it's one of the easiest, most dependable things. And so same way with the autoimmune stuff. People that are on the edge, every little thing, they find us. People have searched the world over, I suspect, before they find you guys. And they expect you to figure it out. Well, you just got a whole handful of tools that will make you even more effective. Your favorites are still your favorites. They're still of great value. They are of their full value as well.
And one last thing to add to that, Chip, is that what's unique about our product line is that they're non-contradictory towards anything that they're already doing. In fact, they'll enhance and help other things that they're doing. But
Exactly.
Chip, thank you so much for joining us tonight. As far as this part of the presentation, we can conclude this part for this evening. Of course, Chip's always available for technical questions, and we have resources outside of him with Doug, our VP, and even if in the medical space, if we we can even sometimes get Rick to make those phone calls if need be, in situations that are special. But again, thank you, Chip, for being here.